Welcome back to Tampa Bay's Morning Blend. Now, before we air our next conversation, we want to share some statistics to show that food insecurity really is an us situation, not a them situation.
That's right. In the Tampa Bay region, we are seeing 15% of children living in poverty, and 30% of Florida's population is considered low income.
And if you take that a step further, Florida has almost 4 million enrolled in Medicaid and 3 million enrolled in SNAP, which of course is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
And now that we've shared the statistics of the situation, let's share our conversation earlier this week with Feeding Tampa Bay and how they're being impacted with the recent changes made by the government.
Almost 20% of the food Feeding Tampa Bay distributes comes from agricultural subsidies. There have been some changes, though, that have been made to these programs. Here to tell us what that means to the families that rely on this is Lorena Hardwick, Chief External Affairs Officer for Feeding Tampa Bay. We love catching up with Feeding Tampa Bay regardless, so thank you for being in here today. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for asking.
Good. Well, let's kind of dive right in. I mean, first off, I shared with your title and you kind of oversee, and right now you're seeing some changes realistically when it comes to Feeding Tampa Bay, aren't you?
We are. We're seeing changes, not just to Feeding Tampa Bay, but we're seeing changes to our community. What you just mentioned as far as subsidies, our federal food purchasing agreements that a couple months ago were canceled. So the impact really is to our farming community.
Yeah.
Those were funds through those agreements that we were utilizing to buy food from our farmers that we were then able to place in our healthy food pantries, such as in schools and other partners of ours. So we no longer have access to those. So it's becoming a little bit more challenging to, figure out how we're going to supplement some of those losses.
Is it fair to say, and I will say the first things, Feeding Tampa Bay, we think of, okay, yes, helps our neighbors, helps with the food insecurities. But sometimes you don't necessarily think of like that next step, like where does the food actually come from? And you don't think of where those gaps are. And that's what you're putting the spotlight on. So it's not necessarily a direct impact to you that you're feeling right now, but it's all of this food that you are able to pass along to our neighbors that's the issue. And that's why, we're talking about this today to raise awareness.
Absolutely. And awareness is key. It is, us as a community, us as neighbors, really looking out for those that don't have a voice. And that is something when I was hired at Feeding Tampa Bay was to create that advocacy piece. What does advocacy mean to Feeding Tampa Bay? And the more that I have been with the organization and I get to learn more about our communities and learn more about how we operate, it's about really giving that voice to someone else. That really is what advocacy is. And from our perspective, it's not just the neighbors, but it's the farming community. It's our children, it's our seniors, it's our veteran community. We see everyone come through our doors that are in need. And a lot of times, it's people that have never experienced a need before.
Yes. That's one thing I've been able to learn since being a part of Feeding Tampa Bay, even with just this show, seeing the need is out there. The need is greater, I think, than any of us realize.
Yes.
And now being able to have that part that you can help facilitate food towards them, definitely a struggle. So, I mean, if people are watching, I'm curious, what can we do? How can we help?
I think the most important part is a lot of decisions are being made that we don't necessarily know the ins and outs of. So it's so important as a community, for us to really listen. Listen to the news, read the articles, understand what our elected officials are doing in DC and Tallahassee, even our local elected officials. It's really becoming more knowledgeable as to, we see the need, but it's knowledgeable as to why the need exists. And we elect our elected officials into office, so it is a perfect opportunity for you to get to know them, to really understand where they're coming from when they're making these decisions. And I know that may sound challenging, but I always tell people it's like the first time may be a little bit daunting, but they're just like us.
Yeah.
And, we just happened to really trust them and entrust them with, how to run our futures. And it's an opportunity to really just send a quick email to say, hey, can we chat? And and the office staff is always so wonderful and welcoming.
Well, and again, I'm glad that you wanted to talk about this today. I'm glad that you were on here to talk about it. Yeah. We are learning a lot about this. If you want to continue to learn more about how Feeding Tampa Bay helps our neighbors, helps our community, feedingtampabay.org/advocacy.